If you've been following the project along, it probably looks like we've taken a few steps backwards. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm building a Mk1 TT Quattro that I'm calling the Mk1 TT Quattro Evolution. We're doing a ton of work to it. We've got a whole build series on this, plenty of stuff left to do. But essentially, our last episode, I finished mocking up our intercooler piping and everything else that kind of went along with that. So the engine bay looked pretty complete. Not so much anymore. We removed everything to leave room for the wiring. So we're at the point of the project where basically everything from here moving forward is going to be permanent. Everything we did prior was simply mock-up just to make sure that everything kind of fit where it was supposed to, and I kind of had an idea of what to expect. But now we're getting, down to the final wire, kind of literally. So we've got a ton of wiring to do. I'm actually looking forward to this. Wiring for me is cathartic, especially after doing a lot of heavy line work. So now that we've got a lot of the engine stuff, we spent a lot of the time on the fabrication. I can take a little bit of a break, a little bit of a breather, and we can start rewiring some things. So let's switch gears here and let's take a look at what we've got. All right, so the primary offender and the main portion of the wiring harness rework that I want to focus on is going to be on the ignition and injector side, and just a handful of sensors that kind of exist on this side. So I run a custom ignition setup. I run LS2 coil packs. This was, again, most of this can be written off as temporary fixes, means to an end that I did a long time ago that I just never got back to, and we're finally, many years later, getting back to it again. So I want to shorten all of these. A lot of these I did in a very poor fashion. These were soldered very poorly. Car ran fine, so I just never found a reason to come back to it. It was working. And then I want to relocate and shorten some of these sensors. We're going to do it very strategically, though. I don't want to mess with the ones that are super sensitive to voltage changes, though the amount that we're changing shouldn't affect anything, at least nothing too meaningful. And then coming down here, I'm keeping the factory knock sensors. I am going to be tuning the car myself, so I do want to have these as a safety measure and another means of logging to make sure that I'm not going to blow my own car up, at least not faster than, I should. So this guy broke when I was getting everything run, so this has got to get replaced. I'm going to be replacing the plug as well because these are getting old and brittle. These are all original. And then, like I said, I do want to change the length of these. This is our map sensor, this is for the throttle body, and this is our cam positioning sensor. These don't need to be this long anymore, so I want to clean them up. We're going to sleeve them. We're going to try to make them look nice, while also not getting too deep into the weeds here, because there's a lot that can happen here. So let's focus on that real quick and go from there. So I'm going to start with the injectors, and we'll see what we do. Before we start cutting, we're gonna install the intake manifold back on. So I actually initially wanted to run these in between the runners, but I kind of like the idea of it running this way and down all as one harness. So I'm gonna try that. So I think what I'm gonna do is I bought more EV1 connectors. So I might cut this one off and I'll just repin it from here. Pop it right in there. Doesn't need to be that long. So this one's gonna be easy. It's right at the bottom of the sheath. That'll be good. Our map sensor is pretty massive, so let's put a zip tie around where I think I'm gonna want it. I'll let excess come off. And the throttle body looks like it's gonna be fine. That one looks good. So I think what I'll just do with this one is I'll depin it and then sheath it. It doesn't look like it really needs to get any smaller, so I think we're looking good there. And honestly, same with our cam positioning sensor. That one's at a decent length too. So I think this is good. Let's get going. Let's take the manifold off and take it from there. So let's talk about the method to the madness here. So I have gone through and I've depinned the ones that I won't be shortening. And then I have snipped the ones that we will be. Now my goal here is, so I've got some heat shrink, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sleeve all of these up to kind of a common bundle, I guess, like right around here. And then what I'll do is I'm gonna run a sleeve through each of the individual ones, and then we're going to label them, and they're gonna look good. They're gonna look pretty. And then also, it'll also keep like this section of the harness a little bit cleaner. And I unwound them so they're going to where they naturally want to go. And then once I sleeve the primary ones, get those situated, then I'm going to rewire our injectors. And then same thing, we'll sleeve them then. And then we're gonna run the sleeve all the way through down to the bottom, and all of the sleeves should fall into inside of this shrink tube. So I might play around with a slightly larger size to make sure that it covers this, but that's the plan. So let's get sleeving, let's get marking, and let's get shrink tubing. don't know about you guys, but this turned out really sick. I'm really happy with where everything is sitting. Everything is really happy where it's at. Nothing's pulling, tugging, or getting intertwined with anything else. All the sensors are nice and like, they're not even necessarily like too taut. Everything has an ample amount of room to kind of wiggle around and not pull on the sensor. Nothing's hanging on something else. Like, my lengths are really, really solid. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and this is probably the best it's gonna look for a very, very long time. Now, I did make one minor mistake, which is kind of annoying, at least for me. I'm really annoyed by it. I'm not gonna fix it, we're just gonna leave it, but we're gonna talk about it here real quick. So in a general sense, for most engines, cylinder 1 is always on the timing side of the engine, which is generally considered the front of the engine. So you've got cylinders 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then obviously the back of the engine in this case. Some of you might already know where I'm going with this. When I started depinning and writing, making all my notes on my notebook, I wrote them down in the order that I was working on them. So I labeled the injector for cylinder number 4, injector number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I labeled these backwards. Really silly mistake, doesn't do anything, but it annoys me. Like I said, we're not gonna touch it. What I ended up doing is I just rotated these 180 degrees. So when you're looking at the engine bay, you can tell they're labeled, you just can't see the label. So we'll keep that between each other. And like I said, it doesn't affect anything. I know which ones go to what. It's nice to have them labeled anyway. They're just labeled slightly incorrectly. But anyway, so not a big deal. We can pretty much forget about this entire side, at least as a wiring harness is concerned. And we can start focusing our attention over to this side. At the start of the video, we talked about redoing these. I've changed my mind. We're gonna leave these alone. At least for now. I haven't even made my bracket for our ignition coils, so it doesn't make any sense to redo these and put this amount of effort on something that I'm not entirely sure where it's going to lay. So we're just gonna leave it alone until then. We'll cross that off the list. The next piece is going to be getting our MAC valve set up. Now, this one's gonna be super easy because our cars already had the N75. We're just going to reuse that pigtail. I've got a pigtail over here. These are all of my deleted sensors that I have since tucked away. We're going to undo these, bring them back out, reintroduce them into the harness, and reuse them since the MAC valve is also a 2-pin controller. Now, the most challenging part was going to be getting the N205 or the VVT solenoid all set up. So for a little background context on this car, this was a very early 2000 model year here in the US. It was actually the first year that this car was introduced here in the States. And it rolled out of the factory in '98. So one of the very, very first production models. So it is a narrowband car. It did not have VVT, and it doesn't even have traction control or ESP. It doesn't know it exists. Since then, I have done a wideband conversion, so the car is wideband now. But I have not done anything with the VVT. The car still doesn't know what VVT is, so we have to get that wired in. Before we dive into the specifics and technical side of getting this wired up, let's talk real quick about what VVT is and why you would want it if you don't have it. So VVT is just this engine solution, and I mean ultimately Volkswagen Audi's solution for a lot of their engines, not just the 180T, for variable valve timing. Now, in stock form, it is strictly used for emissions purposes, and it is used at startup. After that, it doesn't really do anything. However, over the years, decades at this point, tuners have figured out how to tune the variable valve timing on these engines to gain some turbo onset and change the characteristics of spool and effectively gain some power that would otherwise be left on the table. So in stock form, without VVT, just for argument's sake, if your exhaust cam is sitting at 0 degrees and your intake cam is sitting at 0 degrees, when the car runs, they're in sync, they're going to rotate together, and that's it. With variable valve timing, what this allows us to do is when the solenoid is activated, it's going to put oil pressure into the cam tensioner here, and that's going to effectively stretch the chain to pull on the intake cam. And what that's going to do is that's going to advance the rotation of the intake cam respective to the exhaust cam, since the exhaust cam is tied up with the crank via the timing belt. So that's why the cylinder heads look kind of funny when you're referring to dual overhead cam engines. You've got two cams, but you've only got one timing sprocket, and that is because they leave the intake cam alone, so it is adjusted respective to the exhaust cam and can change in timing without obviously affecting anything. So that is the purpose, and that's why we're going to do it. We're going to try to pick up the power that we would otherwise be leaving on the table, utilizing a big turbo and more aggressive cams. All right, so with the little crash course on VVT out of the way, how are we going to get this thing wired up if you don't have it? Well, when I was doing my research, it was incredibly frustrating to find solid information that wasn't just a mix of various solutions. I needed to find something that worked for my setup. So if you've got a TT, this is going to be a surefire way to get this set up. There's going to be two ways to do this. The first way that we're going to talk about is going to be if you were going to completely independently add an entire sensor to the setup. On the cars that have VVT, there are two additional sensors that share the same 12-volt power source, and that's going to be your N249 and then your N75. So pin 1, which on my TT is yellow and black, for both of those sensors, they are spliced together into the harness, and then they work their way all the way over to, if you have a US spec car, the driver's side fuse box in fuse number 34. And then pin number 2, which is going to be your ECU trigger, that needs to go all the way back over to your harness into pin number 115. So again, if we're doing this and you utilize the N75 already, you utilize the N249, and you want to add variable valve timing to your setup, if you do not have it, you run pin 1 to fuse number 34 on the fuse box on the driver's side, and you run pin number 2 for your ECU trigger to pin 115 at the ECU. Now, what I'm going to do, and what's going to be far easier for me, I'm going to remove the N249, which sits on the ECU at pin 105, and we're just going to relocate that pin, splice in a new connector, and scoot it over to pin 115. Then that way I don't have to adjust anything. I don't need to add or run anything whatsoever. It's literally just moving one pin, done and done. So we're going to take our bundle of deleted sensors here, and we're going to reintroduce the two, and we're just going to plug them in and effectively turn this into a plug and play. So with that said, let's get going and let's get these sensors reintroduced back into the harness. All right, so zooming in here a little bit, we're looking for the gray-green, which is pin 105. It's going to be this one right here. And what we're gonna do is we're going to remove our original pin 115, which was a terminator that came with our wideband harness, and that's just to terminate the VVT for off-the-shelf tunes. So let's go ahead and do that and get depinning here. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to finally have this done. I was dreading doing the VVT portion of the wiring just because I didn't have the full picture. I didn't know that it was going to end up being this easy, but it was. And I'm excited to have it out of the way. I'm excited to have VVT. I'm excited to play with it. And then same thing with installing the MAC valve and getting that wired up. That was straight plug and play, super easy. That one I wasn't really too worried about. But I mean, look at it, look at this thing. I decided to throw the valve cover back up and just kind of clean some things up, because from here, you guys, I have wiring to do with the fuel pumps. I still would like to run a stage setup. Not entirely sure how I'm gonna do that just yet. And if I have to, I'm just gonna, like I've mentioned before, I'm just gonna run them both. We'll see if that causes any issues or not, and if I'll have to pivot. But one thing at a time. After that, it's fluid lines. I mean, that's it. That's all I have left is fluid lines. That's it. And then we can start playing around with getting this thing cranked over and see if it starts, which is nerve-wracking to think, but we're right around the corner. I don't know if you can see the board behind me, but it is effectively empty. If you remember from a few episodes back, if you've been watching and following along, I had quite the items on the list, and they're all done. There's really nothing left. So we're right there. I'm really excited. I'm stoked. I'm nervous, but it's right there. It's right around the corner. So I'm gonna leave that here. Thank you for sticking around and watching. Don't forget to grab yourself a t-shirt or a hat if you would like one. And don't forget to also hop in, come join our Discord, don't be shy. I do a lot of behind the scenes with pictures talking about stuff, and then I also engage with your guys' projects. There's a few of you that have been posting, which is awesome. I'm enjoying it. I enjoy seeing what you're making, and I hope you're enjoying what I'm making. So with that, I'm gonna leave this here. I will see you guys in the next episode.